Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy. And if you haven't done already, please make sure that you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss another episode. And we will muchly appreciate if you drop us a review, as with your help, we can reach more women around the world. So press pause, give us a star review. With today's podcast, I'm chatting with the lovely Zara, who's a 22-year-old online coach for women. Zara has been in the coaching industry for about 5 years now, and she started straight from high school, where she has a huge passion for helping women just like her own transformation, but not only through their bodies, but also through their entire lives, to make them feel free, that they've never thought it was possible before. Zara, I want to start a conversation today with what was the biggest roadblock you see with women wanting to transform?
Hi, Siggy. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Very honored. So the biggest roadblock, there are a few that commonly come up when coaching women. I think one big one I do see is a lot of girls coming in too focused on the end goal that they lose touch with the process to actually get there. So they're so focused on like, I want to lose weight, I want to change my body, and they're great goals to have, but they don't actually focus on, okay, the actionable to-dos and the things they need to do to get there. And instead of focusing on the enjoyment of learning to love the process of getting to their goals, which is going to help with longevity, they're just disappointed that they're not at their end goal yet. So that's probably the biggest, like one of the biggest things. And that kind of also just ties into like the consistency piece that you need to succeed in any journey.
It's so common that we still see that, because everyone has like these grand goals of wanting, as you mentioned, to lose, whether it's 10 kilos or get into a bikini or whatever it is, but they totally forget about the actual journey and the step that they need to go through. What are some things that helped you overcome? Because I'm sure like you would have gone through your own struggles around goal settings where you're like, I just want to look this way, I just want to be this way. But what are some things that helped you just sort of like, pull back and, look at it at a bigger, at a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like bigger picture, but like, yeah,
at a big picture.
Totally. So definitely I've had my fair share of like health kicks, those journeys you start, and then by week 3, because you haven't reached your dream body yet, you're like, it's not working, I'm done. That sort of thing. I've had my fair share of those, especially when starting my journey. I think where it started to click a bit more was around the time where I did get my own coach, but it was still like at the beginning, very focused on wanting to look a certain way, wanting to look like the next Rachel Dillon, Lauren Simpson, as we all do when we're like, growing up. But I think it was just simply learning to enjoy the process, having a plan, first of all, that made sense with my lifestyle that I could actually enjoy, and then just pushing myself to stick with it for X amount of time, whether it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks. And then once I started to actually track and see the progress, it was a lot more motivating to stick with it. And I didn't go all in or nothing. I think that's the mistake a lot of women make, is it's very easy to go all in when you're so excited and so motivated to this goal. You're like, yeah, I'm going to crush it. You go all in and then you burn yourself out by week 3. So I think what also has helped me and my clients as well is just taking it one step at a time, because you'll find way more success and you'll make things autopilot a lot quicker doing it in that way.
Let's talk about your journey, how you took it step by step. And for those who don't know your background, would you mind explaining to them like why you even started with the fitness industry, and how were you able to build these like baby steps for your goals?
Absolutely. So I'm quite young, so I got into the industry quite early, straight out of high school, but there was a lot that sort of led me to that point. So growing up, literally from the age of 3, I was put into dance, particularly ballet. And then I did that all the way through to high school. I was in cheerleading, a lot of those like sort of performing sort of sports. How this sort of my background in these sports led to fitness was one, they're obviously a sport, but also particularly with ballet, and anyone who has done ballet could probably has probably experienced some level of this, is there's a big focus on your body. And particularly when I was younger, I did want to take ballet far. I wanted to be at the top, as I do with like a lot of things. I want to be the best I can at it. But what was something that held me back was my body shape. And being told that maybe I was a little bit too blocky. And if we know the typical ballet look, they want very, very slim girls, very that sort of look, and that just simply wasn't my body type, so that held me back. But being told that and aware of that from such a young age definitely brought up weird feelings about my body. And I started to become a lot more conscious of it literally from about the age of like 10, 11, 12, when we start to go through puberty and notice those things about ourselves. And then it just kind of grew from there, particularly in my high school years. I did struggle a lot with yo-yo dieting, restriction, a lot of things we all do sometimes go through, but it was very prevalent, like just a lot of thoughts around my body, a lot of thoughts about wanting to shrink myself, be as small as possible. And that came with a lot of yo-yo dieting, trying diet after diet, comparing myself, all of that sort of thing. And that happened all through high school until the point where towards the end of high school, I obviously did my certifications, and then I started to educate myself more on how to actually start this health and fitness journey properly. It still took a bit of trial and error to find what worked and to experiment things, different programs, whether I finished them or not, and then I got a coach, and then I just started, implementing small habits. So first it was implementing, okay, let's get into the gym to weight train 3 times a week. Then let's build it up to 4. And then it was, okay, let's download my fitness pal and let's get in the habit of tracking every single day. Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's get in the habit of it. And then, okay, let's try and reach a calorie target, and slowly implementing those things over time rather than being like, I'm going to change my entire lifestyle in 1 week, was what allowed me to, reach a sustainable change. And another piece was just educating myself along the way, understanding why something is working, not just following it because it's going to guarantee me to have 6-pack abs at the end of 6 weeks. So that sort of explains my background and how I sort of overcome those challenges and ease myself into this journey to a point where this is just my lifestyle and I love it. And it's, it has its hard days, but in general, it's autopilot and it's easy to stick to.
I can so relate to your upbringing of dance and ballet because I was a dancer when I was younger as well. And then I made that transition towards fighting and MMA. However, those early years of dancing, the pressure that we held upon ourselves, and mind you, I was a larger girl compared to the other ballerinas that I was dancing with. And, when you're wearing the leotards and, all these tight clothing, of course, you're going to start comparing yourself to other girls. And it just, we don't even notice how ingrained all of these thoughts come into our own minds from such a young age. So, like kudos to our parents for pushing us to do all these activities. But when we look back at it, we're like, actually, did this serve me a purpose or did this actually set me back? But mind you, reflecting on this and after you speaking about this as well, it has set us successfully to who we are today because we're able to 100%. Help women navigate the issues that they're commencing with body image.
Absolutely. I think everything's just, I wouldn't change a thing. Like, even though I had to go through the struggles, and we all have different struggles in our journey. And like, there were hard moments in there, especially with comparing and restriction and like the pressure, but I wouldn't change it because, as you said, now I can use the lessons to help women like you and I both do help women today to overcome those challenges from our own experience and knowledge. So, you know, it wasn't nice to go through, but I wouldn't change a thing either.
Let's talk about that journey, because too often people speak about how they've overcome it and they're feeling confident, successful. I would love for you to share, even if you can reflect back of a really hard moment during that time where you were just like, I've had enough. I can't do this.
Great question. Because I feel like there were like little moments and it was so like long ago now. Like it's funny because when you get, you know, so far into your journey, you kind of just forget about all the crappier times. So I definitely think like it had its like ups and downs. Like with yo-yo dieting, it had, you know, it was up and down and there were really like low moments throughout. I think the biggest point that like made me kind of feel way lower was around the age of 13. Again, in ballet, I had just moved to a more prestigious ballet school because I was like, I want to take this far, but being told that I probably won't go far with it because of my body type, because I was a bit more, I wasn't way bigger, but like I'm a more muscular build, and that's not what they want, and being told that. And then around 13 was when I kind of did experience you know, quite severe restriction, and that was a really big, you know, turning point. But then obviously that yo-yoed through high school, but I think the point where I was like, there's gotta be another way, like this is exhausting, I can't do this anymore, was sort of around the time I was studying for my certs, and around when I graduated high school and when I did actually start to get more into this career path and everything, was when I started to become more educated and learning, like, because like I would be googling things all the time because it all started with how to diet, how to lose weight, but then it would, you know, I'd go down this rabbit hole of just learning and finding different bits of information. And then that's when I did stumble across, like, you know, how to macro track and what you don't need to do to lose body fat and like all that sort of thing. That started to become more educated, and I was like, okay, wait, there is a way that is sustainable where I don't have to be killing myself to look a certain way or fit into someone else's mold.
It's so true to have those wonderful reflections and to even like look back and go, oh, wow, that time was really tough, but look at where I am right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the yo-yo dieting. I feel this
Mhm.
ties in really, really commonly around body image, as you know, and also from our upbringing. And you said there was a time from the age of like 13 and so that you were really restrictive with food. What did
Yeah.
that look like?
In all like transparency, like 13, around the ages of 13, 14, it would be basically starving myself, like full transparency, because I thought that's what needed to be done to get skinny. Not only was it the pressures from ballet, but I just started high school. You want to fit in with the cool crowd, you want to, like, you know, whatever was important back then, we all go through it. But you know, you want to be, you know, the prettiest girl, you want to do all this, and there's like another like level of pressure there. So I did fall into quite severe restriction. I got quite I wasn't, you know, diagnosed with anything, but it was just very poor relationship with food, restriction. I did lose a lot of weight. And then obviously what comes with that is falling into binge eating patterns, because, you know, what happens after a period of severe restriction is the opposite. So that kind of, you know, was what I was experiencing around that age. And then from that point, yeah, as I said, it would go, you know, yo-yo from there, all through high school. I'd try different diets. Like I would, you know, there was just different websites and crazy things on, like I'd try different diets I'd see on Pinterest that were like 800 calorie diets, and I would try going vegan because I thought that's what I needed to do, like, you know, that type of thing. So that's sort of like what my experience was like during that time, which I'm, you know, obviously shit to go through, but I'm grateful because it has allowed me to be able to help more women who do experience those like negative, you know, thought patterns, you know, and help them overcome that.
When we're referring back to clients' negative thoughts and how we can empathize with them because of, you know, our own experiences, because I can relate to the yo-yo dieting side of things. My journey started a little bit later. It was around like that 16, 17 mark. And again, can so relate to that with the pressure of having to look a certain way, act a certain way, you know, to
high school.
yeah, to be liked. And it's so interesting because I don't know about yourself, but sometimes I have a tendency to reflect back and go, why did I do this? Like what was so special about that moment for me not to eat, for me to do the endless cardio sessions just to look a certain way, to please a certain person or people, for them for not even to realize, because too often we're doing all these things, but no one turns around and goes, oh, you look really skinny today. Like no one says it.
No one cares at the end of the day. Like no one cares as much as we do. We think they do, but like really, like everyone's all wrapped up in their own stuff.
Yes, yeah. And you know what? This is so relatable to being a coach as well. I'm sure this has happened to you when you first started, is us overthinking the fact of showing up online or putting out a program or putting a photo of us in a bikini and going, what are people going to think? Are they going to be able to see my birthmark? Are they going to be able to see my cellulite? You know?
Yeah, who am I to post this, or am I lean enough to post this, or like definitely those like sort of imposter syndrome thoughts come up.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of being lean enough and dieting and confidence, that whole cycle of us being women, you also mentioned about clients having negative thoughts around their body image. What's like one of the common themes you see when people come to you?
It would definitely the confidence piece, because when I talk to a potential client or a new client, I always ask them why. Like, why do you want to achieve XYZ goal? Whether it's to build muscle, gain weight, whether it's to lose body fat, or whatever the goal may be, I always ask why. And it always, I'm going to say like 99% of the time stems back to confidence. They just want to feel confident. They, a big thing is like they just want to wear what they want to wear. They want to go to the beach and wear a bikini and not care. I think it's just that they want that freedom and they want that weight lifted off their shoulders, that they don't have to worry about what they look like every second of every day, or don't have to base decisions around what they see in the mirror. They just want to gain that freedom back. And I think that's like probably one of the biggest things I see, like when it comes to, working with clients or speaking with clients.
I want to challenge this because I've had this conversation multiple times with friends, other coaches, even some of my clients. And too often we get clients who are wanting to lose weight or look a certain way. However, as you mentioned, like we ask them, why are you wanting to do this goal? Why are you wanting to look a certain way? And too often it has nothing to do with them, but it has to do everything with society.
This is true.
Because you mentioned, because we were talking about this earlier, and you mentioned how sometimes we'll look up to certain people like Rachel Dillon, Lauren Simpson.
Yeah.
Let's take them out of the picture. If they were never around, who would we look up to?
Yeah, that's very true. Then you wouldn't have that look to aspire to, or feel like you need to fit into a certain mold to be liked by people or to be, respected. So
exactly. And like you help women transform their bodies, and you do it from a place of love and care, and not because of them needing to change. I just love having these conversations with women to make them realize, are you actually wanting to lose weight because you feel unhappy with yourself, or do you feel unhappy about yourself because you're comparing yourself to other women?
Yeah, it's definitely a very, very solid and good point to bring up, because that's generally what it always comes back to. Because as you said, like if the societal pressures or molds weren't there, would you still have the desire to change your body to fit that? It's a very interesting point.
Yeah, it's quite a challenging point, because again, as humans, we're constantly wanting to be part of communities. We're wanting to be liked. It doesn't matter what age we're at. We go through these phases of
It's
lives.
one of our needs. We want to belong. We want to be liked. We want to be, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So, if you go through a stage where you think you're overweight, quote unquote, because you're comparing yourself to someone who is leaner, it's just like, oh, you have this ingrained thought now in your head going, oh, well, I need to lose weight because they're leaner. And if I'm leaner, I'm going to be likable.
Yeah. Which is not the case at all.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So I love having these conversations just to make people realize, are their struggles actually due to their own
Yeah.
own lack self of worth, or is it because of like that whole comparison piece?
100%. And that is something that does come up in like a lot of inquiries and stuff, is like, just I find myself comparing a lot, or actually it doesn't come up necessarily in like inquiries, but in check-ins a lot. I see it a lot. Like, I had to get off Instagram because I was comparing, or, that sort of piece. So it does come up quite a lot, and it does add a lot of pressure just to a lot of young women, especially, with the rise of social media and everything. So yeah, very interesting point.
I'd love your intake around comparison because, like, let's be real, I've compared myself to others, and I'm sure you have as well. What are some things that have helped you move past that thought or that process of like comparing yourself to other people?
Absolutely. So yeah, definitely something that I have, struggled with, especially because I'm a competitor as well. So it comes up a lot seeing other competitors online. Like, you can get in your head a little bit, but I do have a few things that I do to try and overcome that. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes you compare, but something I do is I'm very selective with my social media. So there's my favorite feature on the app is there you can create a favorites tab on Instagram, and you can favorite accounts that you want to see. And I don't scroll my normal Instagram feed. I will scroll my favorites feed. I don't even look at my normal Instagram feed, because my favorites feed, I choose accounts that inspire me, that motivate me, that I feel good when I look at their content. So that is something I do. So if I find there's an account, like, I won't add accounts there that I'm like, I find myself that I'll compare to. Another thing is I'm pretty sure there's a feature on Instagram where you can hide accounts. So you don't necessarily, like, even if they're a friend and you find yourself comparing to your best friend, but you don't want to block them, you don't have to. You can hide their account. That's something I tell my clients to do as well. Because I think the biggest place you see comparison is social media. So obviously, that is probably the easiest way. When it comes to in person, it's a little bit more tricky, but it's just about being selective of your environment and where you put yourself. I think that's you have a lot of control over that, but yeah, just being in control of your environment, in control of like your social media. Like, if you're scrolling and something doesn't make you feel good, just hide, block, delete, get rid of it. Out of sight, out of mind is the best way to do it. And then another thing is I restrict myself from my apps at certain times. So I'm locked out of Instagram after 9 p.m. I can't get into it before 7 a.m. Like, I wake up at 6 a.m. and I can't even get onto Instagram. So I can't start my day that way. So I set these boundaries and rules with myself so that I can just focus on me and not compare myself to anyone else. So that's sort of like what I do and what I suggest to my clients to do when it comes to comparison.
There's nothing more refreshing than knowing that someone else is restricting themselves from Instagram, because again, as not only as like a woman on social media, but like as coaches as well, like we have this tendency of just wanting to be on social media, checking with the clients, and then it leaks into our own environment, our own,
Exhausting.
a way of being. So it's just like, all right, like, how can I set these healthier boundaries with myself and be accountable, but also show up as an example to my clients and be like, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. I think this will be helpful for you as well. And back to that muting piece, again, I've muted many, many people, and So often that I have them muted, I don't even realize that I still follow them. And then someday it like pops up and I'm like, oh, I forgot about you. Hello.
Yeah.
However, I also want to dive a little bit deeper about this because I totally agree about like out of mind, out of sight.
Yeah.
Though, is that a healthy way of managing these triggers? Because too often, if we're comparing ourselves, if we're feeling negative about something, that usually stems from a wound. And I'm not saying that every trigger needs to be dove deep and like have all these like stories come up and be like, oh my God, this reminds me of that time when I was so and so. Like, nah,
Yeah.
not everything needs to be like explained and processed. When it comes to that comparison piece, it's just like, okay, like, why am I triggered by this person? Like, what do they have that I'm wanting? Because too often it's a desire that we're really seeking and they have it. And it's just like, oh, like, am I actually wanting this because I truly believe I want to be the next bodybuilder pro? Or
Yeah.
I want this amazing 10-kilo weight loss because they did it as well.
Totally, totally. So obviously, I think out of sight, out of mind is it has to be a short-term solution. So, and then I think along with that, you need to obviously like work on your own like how I would do it is okay, if it's triggering you, out of sight, out of mind initially, but work on your confidence in the background. Learn to appreciate your journey and your wins and celebrate your milestones. And then soon, like, start to show some more accounts. And then I think over time, once maybe don't hide those accounts anymore and see if they still bother you. And if they do bother you, okay, delve a little bit deeper into why. As you said, like, you don't have to dive, head first into like figuring out your traumas and everything, but like journal on it, like figure out, okay, why is this triggering me? How can I overcome it? And I think that can help with confidence building as well. And as you build your confidence, which is a journey, but as you build it, you start to not worry so much about what other people are doing. You sort of have your blinders on, you're focusing on you, you appreciate these, you see other people's success and you can celebrate that, as well as, not putting down your own, like, your own success and your own journey as well. So I think, definitely going into it and discovering why you feel a certain way is important. Out of sight, out of mind works in the short term, but make sure that you do that, and in the background you're working on your own confidence throughout.
And that confidence piece is so important because again, like everyone wants to feel confident. And if we're constantly comparing ourselves to others or constantly putting ourselves down or thinking we're not able to do a certain thing, it's just like, guess what? That behavior is just going to continually repeat itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's something that helps you create more confidence within yourself?
Good question. I think a lot of what helps me build confidence is when it kind of reverts back to like goal setting, but whenever I like make a promise to myself and I show up for that promise, whether it's building a new habit, it could be something so small like a weekly goal of like, I'm going to drink 3 liters of water this week every single day, and me just doing that and keeping that. I think it's just keeping promises to myself, big or small, saying I'm going to do something and actually doing it. That is personally what I hope builds confidence within myself.
I love that. It's so funny how like such a simple goal, like drinking 3 liters of water is such a big factor for us. I don't know about you, but too often I'll find myself working for like 3-4 hours straight and I'll be like, oh my God, where is my water? And it's just like, it's like a thirsty camel in the desert.
So you're talking the whole day, like doing client check-ins and stuff, and you're like, I haven't like drank water, I haven't breathed.
But it's so
But
true. Like a simple goal like that can literally perpetuate us, feeling better long term.
yeah, and it's not necessarily about the goal of drinking more water. It's the fact that you said you're going to do something and you followed through with it and you kept that trust within yourself, which I think just builds, that comfort. Like for me personally, builds that confidence that, okay, I can say something and I'm going to follow through. So I think that's personally what helps me, with that side of things.
Was there a time where you did set something and you didn't follow through with it?
Oh my God, so many times. Of course. I'm only human. So yes, of course. Obviously the start of my journey, I cannot even tell you how many 6-week challenges and things like that I started and I didn't follow through. Even to this day, there are things like I said at the start of the year I was going to post 1 YouTube video a week. Has that happened? No. Like, of course there are some things that, you set out to do and they don't go absolutely perfect, but that's just part of the human experience. And, the best thing you can do is just get up and keep trying.
And that was going to be my next question, because too often people will listen to us and take inspiration pieces here and there, but they also don't realize that, as you mentioned, like, we're human as well. We make mistakes, we forget, we don't drink 3 liters of water every day, but we're doing our absolute best. And the most important part to take away from this is you're human, you won't make mistakes, but you can just set yourself better for the next day, an ongoing process like that.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell my clients as well. Like, they'll come to me and they'll be like, oh, like, I stuffed up today, or it wasn't 100%. And I was like, okay, well, you did your best for today and that's the best you can do. How can you use this experience moving forward to prepare better for next time? Like, if they're like, oh, I didn't hit my macros because I didn't have lunch with me, like, I did the best I could. And I was like, okay, good. Like, how can we prepare better for next time? That's the best you can do. You're only human. We all make mistakes. We all mess up sometimes. Even the people you think are on point all the time, they're not. So the best you can do is just, not get down about it, not think, oh, I've already messed up, I'm just going to give up on this altogether. Just come back the next day, use it as a lesson, see how you can prepare better moving forward.
So many takeaways. So many. I love this.
Yes.
Zara, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And I know our listeners are going to take a lot of value from what we've spoken, and even challenge the way they're
loved it.
thinking about it. It's always fun to have different perspectives come together and talk it through, because too often when one person will say black and the other person will say white, and they can't come together to have an understanding. And I love the fact that we've both come from 2 different ways of thinking and how we've been able to collaborate that for people to understand.
100%. I think it was a really awesome conversation. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Now, girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you screenshot it, tag us at the Women's Fitness Academy. And then till next time, let's start being a little bit more compassionate towards ourselves, and don't forget to drink that water.